Okay, welcome to another Splash of Colour, and our next topic is navigating the assault course.
The female assault course.
Yes.
Yes.
So we got Laura and of course Pauline, and welcome again. So we're going to talk about, there's 2 assault courses you could have. There's one in life, but then the most important and the one most topical probably is career. So today's all about the assault course of your career. So Laura, I'm really keen to get your perspective on the assault course. But first, I think when I first talked about it with you, I was like, okay, I'm sorry, what is an assault course? Because it sounds like a very manly thing.
No, so an assault course, and I think it's kind of like an obstacle course, and it's often used in the armed forces to put people through their paces. So if you imagine there's hurdles to overcome, there's walls to climb, all of that kind of stuff. So if you Google it and have a look at the imagery, but I often think of a female's career like an assault course, because there's so many things that we have to overcome and hurdles to jump over, and it's very, very different. I think we're very careful in this podcast to we always try and remain very open to opinions and perspectives. We've got to have males on this show, we've got females, obviously coming from us as females. A lot of what we talk about is from our perspective, but this isn't a feminist subject. This is just facts.
Yeah.
The reality is that there are different challenges and more obstacles and hurdles to jump over as a woman in your career than there will be if you're a man.
Absolutely.
And that is just the way it is. That's the cultural reality of the world that we live in.
And do you think that's also in the careers and the corporate life most of us live in, a lot of us live in? So if you look, I did have to Google it, as you know, the assault course, and I saw that it actually is used as a strategy to flesh out the weaknesses of the team. So you put your team through an assault course, provide them obviously with all the obstacles and challenges you described, and then you flesh out and quite quickly see the weaknesses. And given the stereotypes of women and our ability, our presence in the workforce today, I think that is just the best description for the things that we have to go through from our 20s, 30s, 40s and onwards into our 50s, where we're still being met with gazillion obstacles. And unfortunately, we're actually a few steps behind. So we talked a little bit about how far are we behind? So you described to me about actually opening up the room to a board door, and I thought that was just a really good analogy of how it feels to be in an obstacle course as a woman. So can you take us through that? Yeah.
So and this is really interesting because I just remember a very significant moment the first time that I had to go in a boardroom and sit around a boardroom table that was full of men, 10, 15, in fact, probably more like 20 years my senior.
Yeah.
And, I often used to describe, in sales in particular, when I was training staff around the fact that first impressions count. And if everyone starts at 0, when you meet an individual, you'll either go +1 or +2 or -1 or -2 for little things, right? The handshake, how you introduce yourself. Everybody knows this stuff, right? So it was interesting that I kind of had this idea of walking into a boardroom and realized that I wasn't actually at 0. I was probably somewhere about -5, -6, because I was female, the only female in the room, about to be in that room. I was in my 20s. And certainly the youngest, certainly the least experienced. I am a woman of colour. I'm not from Australia. And I probably didn't wear the usual corporate attire or speak in the usual corporate way that they were used to.
Okay, so you just actually went through about 5 or 6 different challenges.
Oh, and there's plenty more. If I had have been part of the LGBT community, or if there's other things that would have set me back even further. But the thing that the point I'm trying to make is that as a female, we're already on the back foot when we walk into those boardrooms, and that is just a fact.
So I think what do we have to be doing in order to overcome this obstacle? Because it's not like we can just stomp our feet, although we're doing a very good job at it at the moment. We can't stomp our feet and go, okay, well, it's our right to actually do this. We say that. However, obviously, action speaks louder than words, and it's actually not resonating potentially with a lot of our peers in the corporate world. So when you go into a boardroom like that, and your experience when you went through, what was the reaction? And did you actually see that, -5 as you were going through?
Look, I think yes and no. And I also want to say that I think it's not... So if we just kind of take a step back a second, a lot of what is happening is unconscious bias, okay? And there's, some people who are just downright rude and stupid and ignorant, but a lot of what is happening is unconscious bias. So it might be that you're walking in and people see that you're a female and automatically have a different perception of you, okay? And you won't even see that yet. But then you're going to have a conversation, and it may be that they make a point about you being a female, or make a little joke, or make a little comment. And again, there's no malice behind it. There's absolutely no malice behind it.
It's actually normalized.
Yeah, it is. It really is normalized. But the other part of that, where it kind of starts to get a bit more dangerous, I guess, is when it then becomes, you feel like you're isolated in that room. And it's actually really interesting that this kind of taps into a bigger problem, okay, in that it's not just about, for where we are as a society, it's not just about bringing in women into the boardroom, okay? That's great. If we suddenly increase and achieve gender parity, the economic dividends that can be achieved from that is
amazing. The payback's huge.
Yeah. So, the business case for diversity is well established, but people forget about the other part of it, which is inclusion.
Yes.
And this is that second metric. So when you think about when you have got men and women in a room, okay, and you've got people from, and this is not just about men and women either, right? This is diversity around a boardroom table with people from different places, different backgrounds.
Well, even what you described is not just applicable to women. You described language, you described, what you were wearing.
Yeah.
You described so many things. So yes, keep going.
So if you've got a table of people and you've got a room full of people, and the more diverse that room is, the better equipped you are to come up with solutions for problems, the more creative those solutions will be, the more lenses you can see everything through, okay? Now, the benefits of that, though, stop completely if people don't feel like they can contribute.
Yes.
So the inclusion bit is really, really important. Even if we achieved gender parity in all C-suite and SLTs, senior leadership teams, all on boards across the world, it's very important that every female in there, though, feels like they are contributing to the same level as the men.
Yes.
Otherwise...
And that they're not alienated for their contribution or the way their contribution translates.
No. And that's where it's not enough just to put them there. We have to remove the unconscious bias, and we actually have to educate around it, because people don't even realise it. Honestly, I've had some incredible male bosses, right, and worked with some incredible males at the senior level who don't even realise what they're doing, in that they will have a conversation and we'll talk scenarios, and they'll say he, and if we get him to do this and him, and I'm sat there going she, her, and they're like, oh yeah, sorry.
Isn't it awkward when you call that out?
No.
And then the whole room just goes a bit silent and awkward, and then there's a bit of a giggle.
It really didn't bother me as an individual. However, right, if I was walking into that room for the first time in a room full of men and they were all saying he, him, and everything was male, they were cracking the male jokes, they were being a little bit misogynist, which, you know what, it happens, it's a generational thing. That might be enough for me to Yeah. That might be enough for me to not feel confident to speak up.
Yeah, and if it wasn't your personality and your character traits as Laura... a lot of other women who don't have that would not speak up.
The other thing that I think is actually quite dangerous is that what we do to be influential is we do the whole, do you need can I help you with this? And can I make coffees? And can I get coffees for everyone? And can I clean up? And can I do this? And it's like,
Oh my God.
No. You're not
Who
his
does that?
wife. People do that. People
Yeah.
do that all the time, and it drives me mental.
I can't believe that.
Because you have got to put yourself on the same level as them. But again, this is just the cultural reality that we live in. This is what is going to happen, and this is part of that assault course, right? When you get into the career, and whether you do it early, right? Whether you're an absolute superstar who can climb the ladder in their 20s, or whether you're in your 30s or your 40s when it happens, you are going to feel this somewhere, and you've got to be able to overcome it. So going back to the original point, you're always going to be on the back foot. You're never going to start at zero. If you had a penis, you'd start at zero. If you don't, you're probably about -3.
Okay, awesome. Because I think that's the thing that we have to always keep in front of our mind. Because I think, given the entitlement that's going around, given the expectations, yes, we may talk about it, but it's followed through with our actions. So let's talk about a couple of things that you just mentioned there. And I really think a lot of women do, probably not you and I, because obviously we've strapped on something and we're just walking around and throwing it around everywhere. But I just like to say that some women who I think are absolutely brilliant, and I'm working with a bunch of women who are in the C-suite right now in my day job, and they're brilliant and their minds are sharp, but unfortunately they have been characterized, or their perception may be to some of these other male counterparts in the boardroom, is that they come across as emotional, they come across as they don't really have anything to say, and when they do say it, because probably they've held back quite a number of times. So let's say
they're not included.
They're not included. So, but I also think a lot of women actually think I only need to speak when I have something of value to say. But the filter that they're using on what is valuable or not valuable in a boardroom is actually causing them some detriment to their reputation. Because I find a lot of men, what they're showing us is actually, how do you get that equality? So sometimes I will tell you now, and I'm sure that people will go, oh my God, that's her game. I play the audience as I need to get my point across. And it's not because I want to play games. It's because I am very, very conscious of the challenges that are facing me, and that I am probably -15.
Yeah, and also that's just influence. Everybody does that. Trust and influence. You have to be able to
love that.
throw.
Yes.
No, you do. You have to have that whole empathy, and you have to put yourself in another person's shoes, and you have to, change your language and adapt to the person you're talking to. So that's fine.
You just made me feel a bit better.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're not playing a game at all.
But that's how people could pitch. That's how I look at it sometimes in my mind. So if I say, I used to be of that person who's like, I actually know the answers, so I don't have to talk, because I'm only going to speak if it's actually valuable to the room and it's driving the conversation in the right way. And I do that a lot because I need to, because I can come across as a potentially overpowering or direct person.
Person, not woman though. Person or man. And if you are a man, you.
But I don't know. And this is one of my questions I always ask some of my male colleagues. I don't think they think of that at all. I actually have calculated that, and I think about that. Like, look, I have this topic. I really need to get a decision on it, or I need to. So I actually sit there and think, I have all these blockers and challenges. How am I going to craft this in a way that obviously I don't put people offside, but I actually can get a win-win situation? And it actually takes me some orchestration and some thinking on how to do it. And I do find that's why I'm successful in my roles that I do pick, because I'm able to actually sit back and go, because I'm coming from a few steps behind and I'm not at equal par, I need to basically work a bit harder.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, that in our 20s and early teens, that's where I've obviously, everyone knows about my niece now from previous episodes, but my niece and my stepdaughter, I always tell them, you're female, you are off color, so I'm sorry, Cupcake, but you're going to have to work a lot harder. You're going to have to work a lot harder than people who don't have those differences.
So, when you talked about the assault course before, in the context of in the armed forces, it's done to basically tap into the weaknesses of everybody. And whoever finishes at the end are strong enough to, go forth and do whatever they need to do. When I look at, and I genuinely have this feeling, when I look at female CEOs, when I look at females on boards who are absolutely killing it and being themselves, right? Because that's another topic that we'll want to talk about in a second, around masculinizing. Is that a word?
We've made it a word.
Right, okay,
Sounds
great.
fantastic.
Masculinizing yourself. I don't think it's a word, but anyway. But you know what I mean.
Manning up?
Yeah. No. Well, we'll get to that in a second. I'm going to get to that in a second. But when I look at CEOs, especially those who potentially are in their 40s or their 50s, I think, wow, what are the obstacles that you've had to overcome to get where you are? You are one hell of a gritty, strong individual, and I want to talk to you, and I want to get to know you, and I want to know how the hell you did that. Because the thing is about us is that as hard as it is for us, it is also the best time for us to do what we're doing now. And you've got to sit and think about the women that came before us that carved the way. I watched a video the other day on, I think it was on LinkedIn, of the first female that ran a marathon in the 60s. I can't remember her name, but I will have to find that and post it when we post this podcast underneath in the comments. But she ran a marathon with her husband and her friend, and it was a rainy day, so she thought, well, no one's going to see that I'm a woman anyway. She had her hood up. And when she signed in, she put in her initials. Anyway, halfway through, the press car's going by to film, and somebody jumped off who realised it was a woman and tried to pull the numbers off her.
I saw that.
And everyone pushed this guy over. But the press caught it all on camera. And she just kept running. And as she just ran, like, just took off and turned to her husband and said, I have to finish this race now. She said, I can't give up. And she finished it. And this was in the 60s. So she finished the race. And of course, the press caught the whole thing. Within a couple of years, there was petitions for to allow women into the race. There was more women.
Sorry, guys, a fly just flew past.
Yeah, it did.
Welcome to Queensland.
But there was more women then getting involved, and it was just it gives me a really warm feeling to know that I couldn't be where I am if it wasn't for these incredible people that were there before me, and I'm grateful for that every single day.
I agree completely.
And also the fact that even if it is harder for us, again, I'm grateful for that as well, because when stuff isn't given to you and you have to really pull your socks up, and you have to fight hard, and you have to think a little bit smarter.
Yes.
When you actually get to that point where you are in a decision-making role, and when you are owning a company, running a company, whatever it is that you're doing, do you know what the lessons you've learned along the way, the skills that you've acquired along the way, means that you're just better equipped at that job anyway. And I think this is where women are absolutely killing it.
I agree. And I also think that's also, let's tie this into the statistics, right?
Yeah.
So what you've just described is the women who've worked their butt off, that demonstrate that grit. We're going to get a few women on here. We've already had a couple on here in this sphere. We're going to get more women on to describe what they go through. But basically what you're saying is, I also think they need to actually have a responsibility they now have. They've run a marathon. You and I run marathons, and we run sprints and everything else that we do through our career journey. But they now have a responsibility to pay that forward.
Yeah.
And they have to encourage other women to do so. So one of the, I was reading the other day is Forbes highlighted, and it was really difficult for me to get statistics on Australian companies for this, which amazes me, and as a whole probably other topic. But the American Forbes described and provided statistics that actually, I think it was 26 women make up CEO roles in the Fortune 500 companies. And this is from last year, so 2018. So that's 26 out of 500 companies that make up CEOs. What did those women have to do to get through? So they mentioned a number of topics and challenges that those women experienced. They actually went and interviewed them, and they listed quite a lot of things. Now, I don't think we need to talk about everything, because they can be grouped to systemic causes or systemic challenges that we experience. And one of those topics I think we touched on a little bit, which was the inequality. Like, definitely from day one, there is a level of inequality in whether it's how we're remunerated, whether it's just by the way we look, the way we interact, just by walking through the door and being a female. But there are so many other things also that are probably actually pushing us down, and we need to talk more about the tips and what we can actually do to make sure we're overcoming it, and what does that hard work look like? Because we still have a little bit, a long way to go, so to say.
And I think the other thing as well is we kind of touched on it a little bit before. When you get there, through your hard work and your grit, don't try and be a man and think you have to be a man to get ahead.
No.
That is something that I struggled with when I very first went into leadership role. And I honestly thought back about this the other day. I don't think that I wore a skirt or a dress, right? Because I used to go to Sydney for board meetings. I don't think I wore a skirt or a dress until there was more than 2 other females in that room. And then I felt like I could wear a skirt or a dress. Now,
wow.
I know. Now, most days at work, I would wear a skirt or a dress.
Yeah.
But every time I went to it, I put my power pants on, or whatever it is that you want to call it.
No,
isn't that amazing?
It's actually not your fault, right? And I actually don't think it's a bad thing. So let's talk about the 80s and the 70s and women, the feminist movement that was going through there. The new way of dealing with the inequality, and it's a strategy, is to mimic the man. Now, look, now it's dated and you don't have to do that anymore. But the only reason why we don't have to do that is because someone did it before us. So back to that, who has come before us to actually enable this.
But don't mimic it, and then don't feel like you have to put other women down as well to also be a man when you're in there. I think that's very, very important.
Good segue. Sisterhood. So you're about to touch on sisterhood, right? So a lot of women, unfortunately, are still in that thing where I have to compete, and that means competing with everyone. So it's like you're Lord of the Flies and you're on an island, and you're basically have to take everyone down in order to get ahead.
It is. It's very tribal. Like it is very, and it's very it's ridiculous, because when you think about it, you're all fighting for the alpha male's attention. Yeah. And actually, that is just all we're doing is highlighting that we're different and that we're male and female. And I think, I've come across those ladies before, and I just think that it's a shame.
It is a shame.
The fact that you're here has, is a result of the strong women that have come before you, and you're letting them down behaving this way.
And a group. They've come through as a sisterhood to actually fight for our rights. And it's actually obvious these days. So that's one of the biggest things I think that we can take out is when you create a sisterhood or a tribe, make it for the right reasons, empowering women, lifting them up, looking at how you can actually encourage other women to speak up, to stand in their confidence, and to actually be comfortable to do so. And unfortunately, they have to actually speak up a little bit more in order to overcome that sort of feeling where a lot of women don't feel like they can actually speak up and not push each other, and they have to push each other down in order to be able to be seen.
Because if we look at this as purely from a forget that we're female or male, and just look at this from the advantages of having gender parity in your business, okay, and the economic advantages of that. So Queensland, Australia, which is where we're filming this and where we have the pleasure of living, Queensland government are leading the way. So I went to a networking event recently. It was hosted by Deloitte. Holly Ransom was speaking, and Di Farmer was there, and she was talking about they realised a few years ago just how much they could benefit from ensuring that they had 50% men and 50% women on their boards in Queensland government. Okay, so just in government. Yeah. So forget the whole commercial part of the economy. That was worth $87 million. So they were currently sat at 31% female. And they have worked their butts off to get it to where it is now. So in 2.5 years, it's now 49%. They wanted it at 50 by 2020. So well done, Queensland government.
Well done.
Absolutely nailing it. But again, once
imagine the challenges they had to get through that.
They did. So they talked about some of the departments that were very, very old school and just didn't understand.
Imagine all the people shitting on them through that whole journey.
I know, but they knew that what they were doing meant that it was going to generate this. They knew what it meant, and they knew how important it was, and they really wanted to lead the way on it, and they did an absolutely cracking job. But their next challenge will be for those females that are coming in there, what environment are they walking into?
Yeah.
Because you lose the gains that you can gain if they don't feel like they're in a position and they're safe enough to be themselves. So there was actually a study by Google over 2 years, and they actually analysed their highest performing teams. So they had a few teams that were absolutely just completely outperforming everybody else. And what they did was they even tried to separate them up a little bit. So they put some high performers and injected them into other areas that were maybe falling down. It just didn't work. So it's like, what is it about this group of humans? What is it about this kind of, your 4 people, the 5th entity of your life that becomes this team? And they actually did this study and they published the results, and there was 5, test me now on my memory, there was 5 traits that they all had, and the number 1 was psychological safety. So it was their ability to feel safe enough to bring their ideas to the table and to be their most authentic selves. So number 1 was psychological safety. Number 2 was, there was structure and clarity was in there. Number 2 was them having meaning, in terms of they were all on that journey together. There was a few different ones, and again, I will share some bits and pieces about this as we kind of go through over our socials. But that psychological safety one, I mean, there's no point in having different people together if you're not safe enough to talk about what they want to talk about. And if you can't be yourself, if you feel like you've got to put power pants on when your go-to and your preferred would be a dress that day, you need to kind of put the dress on and go in and be your bloody self. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, I look at it and I'm laughing when you say power pants, purely because I'm going to start using that phrase now. Whenever someone wear pants, I'm going to be like, okay,
pants.
Just take the power pants off, all right, and just leave them at the door. But I think you just really hit on the spot, right? So the new actual superpower is being a woman. We know this, right? Because it's actually become a popular thing. I hate to say it like that, but it's actually a means to an end, like the power pants. So in the 70s, 80s, they had to put the power pants on. 60s, 50s and 40s, earlier than that, it was very, very feminine and it was more subservient and all of that. But now we're definitely at the voice is actually a popular thing to have. Going out, taking the streets, standing up, marching, voicing our opinion and ripping other people down. Unfortunately, the opposite sex seems to be a little bit of the thing. But what you're describing there is a whole bunch of women coming in because of the other women who've actually fought for them, created that sisterhood and opened the doors. Now what are they going to do? Psychological safety. I've never even heard of that, but it makes absolute sense. And that's similar to what I was talking about earlier, where some of the C-suite women who are actually now, because we've got a few challenges, obviously in the financial services industry at the moment, it is really a difficult and tough time. And if you're an actual senior leadership member or you're a board member, unfortunately, again, ripping away the sisterhood, it actually is sort of compete and survive and sort of step on each other's necks to get to the point.
You don't need to do that.
We don't need to do that.
No.
But unfortunately, I think the traits of some of the men who've been in those seats for a lot longer, they're very good at it. And it actually is not obvious. So for me, my view and my encouragement to other women who are in those vulnerable positions, and unfortunately because they're in stressful situations, don't feel safe in voicing some of their opinions, don't feel like they can actually be heard for the message they're trying to provide, but instead they're being sort of dismissed because of all of the other stress points that are going on. We need to get a bit smarter, and we need to actually, I know you don't like this, but we have to actually look at some of our male counterparts and see how they're playing the game.
Oh, 100%. And one thing that I'm going to say on that, which I totally agree with you on, is the second part of this, right, which is have confidence to be yourself, because the men will.
Yes.
But also know your worth, because the men do. Right. And this is the thing that you want to be able to take off. So I was telling you a bit about this earlier. There is a website that is available. It's a platform in the States called Get Raised. It's not available here in Australia yet, but it should be. And it is a platform where you can go on as a female and you can literally plug in your employment history, how much money you're on, how much you've been on, and the skills that you've got to offer. What it will do is it will run a search against every other person. Man, woman, doesn't matter what the industry standards are for your salary and for your years of experience. And it will basically come up with, okay, we think that you could ask for another 10 grand or 5 grand, or in some cases 20 grand because you've been grossly underpaid for the last 5 years. And not only that, it will give you, and it will pump out a letter for you to give to your boss asking for the pay rise, which is written in the best possible way to be able to go and do that. And the impact of that was huge. So after only about 18 months of it being available, it was $2.4 or $2.5 million of raises of women
were assured,
were achieved.
Provided.
Yeah. And 76% of the people who use the platform got a pay rise.
That is amazing.
And they're actually looking at doing it now in the world of female entrepreneurs, because that's the next thing that's absolutely like 4%
of women getting
global
grants.
of global VC money went to women last year. That is disgusting.
Yeah.
And they have also, they're going to pump out an equity kind of
agreement.
Yeah, that will basically say, this is what you get, because that's the other thing. Women give away way too much equity for a very small amount of money.
And that's actually because we have that mentality that we have the beautiful characteristics of giving ourselves to everything, whether it's home, whether it's life, whether it's our parents, whether it's now work. Our ability to calculate our value is really a mental dilemma, because women naturally will devalue themselves, because we talked about in a couple of podcasts ago where we talked about being able to say yes. It's really difficult because we are measuring our weaknesses and what we're not good at, whereas men are actually going, 30% of that resume and that job description, yeah, I meet that. Sure, I'm going to go for the job, and they end up getting the seat. So you've now just talked about an absolutely fantastic idea, Get Raised, what.com, I assume. So Get Raised in America, that is actually enabling women who don't probably feel confident to ask for the raise and giving them a pathway to do so.
And I think this is another obstacle. So obviously it's not just if we talk about the obstacles that are external, okay, but the internal obstacles as well that you kind of have to go through. And this is interesting that I was kind of thinking about this the other day and thinking about what the qualities are of leadership, of good leadership. And if you think about what they are, it's influence, it's trust, it's been able to bring people together, to lead with absolute clarity, to really define that vision, and take people on a journey, and be accountable, and all of these things. If you think about the role the female has played, okay, in society for the last several generations, X amount of time, it's in our DNA. We are programmed to build communities.
Yes.
Cultures. We are programmed to influence people, ensure that we are safe and that we've got people around to raise our children, to teach them the lessons, to sit and explain and communicate, right? And all of those things that make you a great leader. We are naturally predispositioned to do so. Now, I'm not talking here about, okay, if you put a woman in every single leadership role, some of them will be awful, men will be better. You know, there's depending on the individual.
Well, it's actually it's not about that. So you're spot on, right? Yeah. It's not even about the men and women thing. No. It's actually our natural talent. It's a talent.
It is. And it's a natural predisposition, in the same way that you can't argue with the fact that for, the male, their bodies are built, their whole frame is built to be stronger.
That's it.
So you can't argue with that,
No.
okay? And there's definitely some women who are stronger physically than men, of course there are, but it's always going to be a bit harder to do so.
Yeah.
And I genuinely believe that that is our superpower. Leadership is a female superpower. Not every single person is going to be able to do it, but if it is built in us somewhere, if you're good at home, if you can sit and if you've been able to raise good kids and teach them lessons and communicate with clarity and explain why they've got to go and do this, and you've got them to school and you've got them in the bath at 7 o'clock and to bed on time, you kind of got those soft skills that you need to be a leader. Yeah, there's all the other things that you need to learn, but it's quite interesting that, especially now with millennials and Gen Zs and the way they want to be managed through real collaboration, right? And not this hierarchical bullshit. But they want to be managed in a way where everybody is involved and they're all going on the journey together. And culture is such a huge important thing for people.
Yeah.
It's set up for us to thrive. It really is.
But why aren't we thriving? What's the challenges and the blockers?
Yeah.
We still have a long way to go, right?
We do.
So the reality is everything you've described is we are set up for this. We should be psychologically safe because although we're a few steps behind in regards to the perception of females and what they bring to the table in the corporate world or in your career, they are naturally, what you're saying is we have the actual capacity and the actual natural talent, the natural born talent to be leaders because we already lead our own communities and our tribes and our parents, and we end up going through and actually raising the future generations. Not that men don't, but we actually are set up to be successful in this department. And what we need to do is probably just say a little bit more of a yes and actually take the lead and speak up a bit more.
Yeah.
One of the things they did talk about, which we didn't really get into, is this inequality with the financial situation. So show me the money, right? So with the money, us being able to actually ask for money. So one of the key things I think I was thinking through when I was reading this Forbes article, I was like, okay, so we definitely, obviously, when we get to the board table, what are we doing to demonstrate our worth, which some people go the extreme, power pants and whatnot. And then some people end up eventually getting isolated, or if they can't bring others on the journey and other women and show their sisterhood and bring them to the table. The part that probably goes a little bit silent is I'd be really interested, and I haven't looked up the stats on this, is how many of those 26 women are paid equally to the male CEOs or the men before them. And what is the disparity in our pay, and what do we have to do to get that? And you already talked about, there are sites out there to enable women, but what do you think? And especially with your background, I want to know, what do you think are the key things that women need to be doing now in order to sort of, grow some balls and actually step up and actually ask for what they're worth?
Yeah. So, going back again to this event that I went to that was hosted by Deloitte, and Holly Branson was the keynote speaker for that event. So she is the CEO of Emergent. She was named one of Australia's most influential women. She interviewed Barack Obama. I think he personally asked for her to interview him when he came to Australia when she was
I love that.
25.
You mean Michelle asked, sorry.
She's probably. She's amazing. But she talked about one of her friends who was a recruiter.
Yeah.
And they were kind of having a wine and talking about kind of gender disparity and pay and all of that. And she said, I get phone calls all the time as a recruitment consultant from a man who might just call and say, can you let me know how much this role is paying? Or can you let me know how much where I sit in the market, and with my X amount of years experience and what positions are out there right now. And she said, that's free information that we can give away as recruiters, and it's something that we have a wealth of that information at our disposal because we're constantly talking to employers all the time around what they're doing and all of that. And she said, she'd give that information and say, so, are you someone looking for a role? And they're like, oh no, I'm about to go into an interview. They just wanted to know because they knew that conversation was coming and they wanted to see what the going rate was and where they sat. And she got those phone calls all the time. And when I think about it now, I have had several of those phone calls, but never from a woman. never from a woman. And this lady...
And do you see how what you just said? So they've basically also said, I'm going into another interview. So not only does he have the balls to say, what are you paying before I even consider you, but I actually potentially have another offer. So I need to know, and I'm letting you know.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that.
But so they do. They ask the questions. I think they see everything as, or not they, but how you should see it as black and white.
Yeah.
So if there is a role and if there is the duties, and this is where I get very pragmatic. I'm a highly emotional person, but I get very pragmatic when it comes to stuff like this. If you want me to go and execute tasks A through to F, and you want me to do it to this standard, and you have chosen me with my background and my expertise, regardless of how much bloody experience I've got, and you back me and I back me to get the results that you want, then you pay me the same money that you would pay anybody else for those results. And what is quite interesting is, there's always that, I think you've got a bit more room to negotiate when you've got a few more years of experience under your belt. But I have seen, and I've been the woman that's kicked the ass of the guy with 20 years experience on top of me in terms of actual results.
Yes.
So I don't think, and I think we are moving away from that now. I think everything is a lot more, it's digital, it's data. You can't argue numbers anymore,
But I think it's the examples. I'll use my own experience, right? So even though you can't argue and it's okay and it's all transparent what you should be paid versus what you are being paid, what's actually not transparent and what's not happening is actually the results. So after you get the jobs, the statistics of how much you should get paid for being an X role, a Y role is there. But when you actually get the job, so for me, I'm a consultant, so I move around companies and I do work for them. Most of the jobs are shit, so I'll just put that out there. They're like, you have to work your ass off to actually, I do recoveries and startups. So for me, it's hard work, and I know I'm going in and I'll be working 12 to 15 days as required and putting
12 to 15 hour days.
15 hour days to try and get the outcome that they've asked me to get. And it's a very thankless job. And the reason why it's a thankless job is because people recognize me and have been of coming into a job paid as a day rate, which is obviously a little bit higher than a permanent position. But I really get the shit sandwich. So not only do I get the shit work to recover everything that's broken, but I also get the flack of actually getting paid as a contractor / consultant. And there is a stigma because I know a lot of male counterparts that I've worked with who are doing similar roles to me and in the same company for some things where they're on another program or IT piece of work they have to do. They get paid potentially more than me or at the same level. But I have actually, people have commented, oh, well, you get overpaid.
And they wouldn't have had that comment to them.
They've never had that in mail. I know that for sure because I've asked other males. So it's okay for me to be alienated because I know my worth. And I know that I'm smart enough to recover IT problems and stuff-ups in companies these days. Yet it's not pointed out for my male counterparts. Yeah. And so when you get there and it's all there, you still got a little bit way to go. And I think one of the biggest things that I would have to say to women is you need to be able to be comfortable to sit in it when you've got it. So when you're there, do not be swayed. When you start getting questioned, and this is not only applying to money, it's actually when you're in seat and you're making decisions and those decisions get criticized. And unfortunately, I do definitely see it every single day. I see it every day. It's not going away, I don't think, anytime soon, where I do see a lot of those senior leaders, male and female, who basically scrutinize, and the female element always comes in. Oh, well, she doesn't really, she's a bit out of her depth. She's a bit emotional.
Yeah. And can I just say the other thing on that as well is that often that can come from above and it can also come from the side.
And that's what I'm talking about. This is side.
And below though.
Yeah, and below, absolutely.
You can be the most empathetic, down to earth, open, female leader, right, on the planet. But you also need to not forget that you have got to make the hard choices and the hard decisions. And I've made hard decisions and communicated that. And they haven't come out of the blue. They've been decisions that have been communicated, and I've given them ample opportunity to change or whatever it might be. And got that, oh my God, I can't believe that you would do that to me. And you know, that whole, and it's like, but I'm your boss, and you knew that was a line. And you crossed the line, and you know that my role and my responsibility here is to do the best thing for the room, not you as an individual.
Yeah.
And you know, and it's funny because the emotional side to it and the love that you kind of have for your people as a leader, and again, that is felt by males and females, but there's definitely decisions that I have made, right, that I've been questioned, and I know for a fact wouldn't have been questioned
if you were a man.
If I was a man. No.
I know.
And it's that whole, they've tried to.
It's actually quite irritating.
It is because, but again, it's just another thing that we have to overcome. It's another thing we have to overcome.
It's another obstacle on the assault course.
It is. It's another obstacle. So we talked about kind of a little bit of unconscious bias, whether it be the he and the, you know, the misogynistic jokes or whatever, the feeling that we have to then the internal, the barriers that we have to then go through and the obstacles that we have to overcome, which is, you know, can I be myself? Can I say anything? Yes, you bloody can. Make sure you do, and make sure you be yourself.
And it's your responsibility to do so, even though you don't think it's valuable.
Do
it anyway.
It is, definitely. And I think then the other part of that is also, as much as this is about career, I think we need to talk a little bit about how we are, the things that we go through as a woman, between the age of 20 and 60, let's just say that's your career, okay? Yeah. A man will go into a career, like say, you know, we're both following the same path. We'll go to school, we may or may not go to university, we'll jump into our first jobs, we might like it, we might not like it, we might go to another job, we might go up the ladder, whatever it is. Boom, we hit 30. Our ovaries start screaming at us, okay? And then it's like, okay, right, well, and whether our ovaries are screaming at us, we're married. It's
someone else telling us.
Yeah, someone else is telling us, and suddenly we think, okay, so then we have to have this exit, whether it be for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. It all starts getting a little bit rocky, and it is actually statistically at this point where... Girls are running, if you think of it as an assault course in a race, right, and you had a boy and girl, up to this point, girls are typically earning more money in their 20s than guys. They're getting higher grades at school than guys. And then, boom, they hit that 30. Post 30, it is then, we kind of are at that crossroads of which way that we go. Now, whatever crossroads you decide, by the way, is entirely up to you. Some people try and do both of it. But I think... one of the things that we need to consider here is that being a parent and being a mother is one of the most highest, unbelievable things that you can ever do that a man can never do, right? A man can never do that.
No, say that again.
What? Sorry. But they can't. So don't forget that, right? So whatever you decide to do, you do both, you don't do it, you whatever it is
you've
your
chosen
choice. Yes. In about another 10 years time, chances are you're going to have a parent and a grandparent that is now classed as elderly, okay, because of the cultural reality that we live in. People are living longer. And it is known and it is fact that it is the female in a household, on the whole, that will step up and look after the parents and the grandparents and the elderly in a family. And then you mentioned before...
Let's talk about that.
About you, because when I actually said this to you, you were like, yeah, and I'm the only girl.
And I have step-parents. Yes. So I have 2 sets of parents that I have to consider. So and I do consider...
You can have like 6 elderly people in the next 10 years that you've got to take care of.
Yeah, so you've got elderly people, then you've got your siblings. If you're typical female and you like sort of lead the champion of organising things for your family, and then you have your own children. So all of those 3 things, and then in the middle, you're trying to grow your career. So all of that balancing out, the only saving grace I think we've got is definitely off our own doing, mind you, is our ability these days to actually become the breadwinners and the opportunity that's available to us, which has completely opened thanks to predecessors. We actually now, in America as an example, are 49% of the breadwinners of the household. So the only difference is we have access, we have the money at our disposal, we have the access, and we have the ability to elicit help, which we don't actually tend to do. So that's the only difference is typically, yes, the woman would go, they would have to look after the parents, they would have to look after the children, organize the family, balance a active career, and completely kill themselves while doing everything and have burnout, which we've talked about before. But the biggest key thing that an opportunity we have is that we're actually being able to exercise our income capacity. We're actually allowed to become the breadwinner. A lot of men are doing the amazing thing of actually taking up a lot of the responsibility, but it comes with one key secret that we need to do more, and that is ask for it and demand it and expect it.
Can I say on that as well? Yes, because so in my head, if you are in a relationship, right? And again, sorry, I'm very visual, so I always seem to be talking about visual things. But if you imagine, a circle, a full circle, or an apple, right? And you're half and half as a couple. If I am earning 75% of our household income, but I'm also doing 75% of the cleaning and the cooking, that doesn't work. So like in my relationship, for example, my marriage, I don't do any cooking or cleaning.
What the hell?
See?
I did that on purpose.
Yes. Now, I've been like this for a long time, and it's terrible.
Where is this man?
To the point, he's behind the camera.
Thanks, Ben.
It's what's interesting though is, right, it's 2019, okay? And people still say to me, what do you mean you don't do any of the cooking or the cleaning? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm the breadwinner.
Yeah.
And also I go, and I don't want to, but I do this and he does this. And I'm sorry, but for however many generations, women have done 90% of it and no one said a thing. But the second it's a 50-50 distributed household, it's like, what do you mean you don't do any? I'm like, no, that's not how I contribute. I contribute in other ways. I do other things.
Correct.
And that's what he does.
But I think it's because of the perception, and it's unfortunate that a lot of our men haven't evolved from this, and a lot of men have, obviously yours has, but the masculinity or demasculine, whatever that word is, when you actually strip a man off their masculinity is what it's considered, right?
So many relationships have ended, and so
because
many,
of this,
because of women going ahead of the man in the career, because of the fact that the woman has gone back to work and the man's had to take some time and put things on hold, because of the fact that the woman has been, in her 40s. When you think about this, in your 40s, you're in your prime career time. That is your prime career time, and if you are running a company, you're doing whatever it is you're doing, you're traveling internationally, and parents start getting sick, and you've got a husband who, imagine this the other way around. Imagine you got a man in a high-flying role in his 40s and a female in a normal income, whatever role, okay? And the parents get sick and someone needs to step in.
Who's sacrificing?
The woman would naturally do that, has done that for the last however many generations. But we're now in a situation for the first time that there's probably going to be 2 layers of that attached to that. And also for the first time where women are starting to outperform men in the business and give them more opportunity.
Yes.
So I'm going to love the day that they have to stop. And it's coming,
yes.
And just to see the reaction to that, because I think it took a bit of time and a bit of wobble.
I think we're seeing the reaction already. It's starting to come through with the divorce rates, with the amount of women who are actually single. Yeah. And that's another assault course we're going to talk about, which is the assault course of love, because a lot of women who are in those roles where they are the main breadwinners are struggling to hold on to relationships.
Do you know, someone asked me that? Okay, yeah. And I won't say who. And I really hope she's listening and I hope she knows that
okay, you'll have to tell me who this is later.
But a woman who, anyway, she, when I took a job and I was promoted and I was going into a leadership role, and one of the things she said to me was, and how does Ben feel about that? And I was like, oh, he's thrilled for me. Why? And she said,
God.
when I went into a leadership role, that's kind of what spiraled into my divorce. And I was like, well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really common, and it's because we don't talk about it more, and that's why obviously we're talking about it, because it is a really difficult position, and also it's a fine line. But anyway, let's save that for the next assault course of love. But I think what you've touched on is a couple of other things that I want to hone into. Is let's talk about one of the biggest challenges that I think gets tossed around and used in a negative way against women because of the emotion we bring. And that is definitely one of the Forbes items that they picked up, that emotion.
God, spare me.
And why do we, your decisions and providing feedback to a person, I think you were talking about earlier, and how you described giving feedback and how you kind of looked at and criticized for that. Same position that I'm in when obviously you take on a job and people think, oh, you're overpaid because you're a female, and they come across that way. But our reaction to that, obviously, we're going to stand for ourselves. And you and me definitely as personalities is definitely going to be very clear on our expectations of, I'm sorry, we do know our worth and we can make those decisions. But a lot of people aren't, and they actually get labelled as too emotional. What's your thoughts on that?
Okay, I have so many things to say on that. I don't even know where to begin. Okay, first of all, when we think about what business is, right? Business is ultimately trying to convince somebody else to pay you money in some way, shape or form. You're selling a product, you're selling a service, you're selling something, okay?
Yes.
You're solving a problem, but ultimately you are talking to a customer and you're asking them to make a buying decision, which is an emotional decision, right? Backed up by rational thought.
Yes.
It is an emotional decision though. When you are competing for talent to come into your company, when you're building a culture and you're fostering an environment that is to get them productive and feel like they have a sense of belonging, psychological safety, they have meaning, all of these things that make a high performing team, that is emotional decision making. So if I, because I don't have a penis, I'm more able to tap into my emotions, then amazing, bring it on. That's great. Now, emotional is another thing though, okay? So tapping into my emotion because it's seen as a female thing is actually an advantage in business for those reasons we just discussed. Emotional, I'm sorry, but it's absolute bullshit, because emotional as a man and emotional as a woman may be seen in different emotions that come out. So a man who's emotional will tend to lean towards, again, it'd be very stereotypical here, lean towards anger. Okay, they might throw stuff across the table, scream and shout.
I've literally had a male do that.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Thrown a chair across the boardroom.
We might get a bit teary, and we might actually go to the bathroom and have a little cry on our own.
Remove ourselves, yes.
But we will remove ourselves. So you tell me which is the most professional.
Love it, Laura.
So this is it.
And this is fact. This is evidence.
If you are in a C-suite position, if you're in a leadership, if you're in any position in an office environment and you're actually good at your job, there'll be a level of professionalism that you put on when you walk into that door.
Yeah.
Okay. And sometimes it does. The lines blur between the two.
Yeah.
But just because I'm a female doesn't mean I can't be professional.
Yeah. And just because I show my emotion differently,
Yeah.
and not all the criers, but because I may, come across as irrational because I've raised my voice, because I refuse to accept what you're dishing out, that can also be labelled as emotion, and it's absolutely not.
But I think the other thing is where we often get it thrown in our faces is emotional decision making.
Yes.
Okay. And that is something that we got to watch out for.
Yeah, it gets confused between irrational and emotional. I think they mince those two things.
But men and women
do irrational decisions all the time.
Every
day.
time. And that is just part of Leadership 101 and Training 101.
And that's because they feel quite good.
Yes.
They can throw their power around. I'm just going to make a decision because I know what I'm doing because I'm a man.
But that's not seen as an emotional decision.
No.
That's seen as a powerful decision.
Correct.
And
a leader.
Yes. And this is it. So I think regardless, your responsibility in a professional environment, in a leadership environment, in any environment, is to take responsibility of your actions. And if your job description involves decision making and the best decision making for that business and the team of people that you are supporting, it is your duty and your responsibility to sit and think about, have I thought through this decision? Is it good for the wider group? Is it good for the business? Is it in line with the values?
Yep.
Is it meeting the standards of what I needed to meet? Yada, yada, yada. And then make that decision. Now, whether you're a female, male, whether you're 20 or you're 50, that is something you should just go through, period. So the whole emotional thing, I think the next time, for anyone listening who ever gets that, whether they hear someone has said that about them,
or they're judging as well.
Yes.
Even as we as females look at that, oh gosh, she's showing a bit too much, she's being a bit emotional, pull it back.
but actually sit there and have the conversation in a very professional way. I think the best thing that we can do, it's a bit like killing people with kindness. The best thing that you can possibly do is to confront it in a non-emotional way and actually have an ask, why did you say that? Why do you think that?
And yeah, absolutely.
They won't
nip
have
it in the
anything-
bud.
They won't even have anything to say because it was such a stupid point that they made, and it will have been a flippant comment that they've made. They'll have actually absolutely nothing to back it up, and it can actually they'll realize that you're actually a lot more mature and more professional than they are.
Yeah. I really love, and I think we need to talk more about the emotional and that being thrown around a lot, because I see it a lot in my day-to-day work.
It's insulting.
It's absolutely, it's patronizing, it's insulting, and it makes you feel absolutely inadequate. And a lot of powerful women who have a lot to offer end up shutting up because they're concerned that they are portrayed as emotional. So they filter what they're saying. They're more conscious of it. In fact, they speak less.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely opposite of what we need to be doing. We need to actually be speaking up more. We need to be professional, as you've outlined. However, professional doesn't mean unauthentic.
No.
So
in any way.
stay in your authenticity, stay and actually be confident that you're speaking up for the right reasons and it's fact-based or it's backed by your understanding of the situation. But apologizing for it is not required.
And see yourself as equal. If you see yourself as equal, you are more likely to be seen by others
As equal.
And whether that means that you need to go and do some power poses, Google that, YouTube it, have a look at what a power pose is. It's amazing. It's amazing. We'll talk about that. That's actually how to kid your brain into reducing your cortisol, your stress level, and increasing your, what's the male hormone? What's the male hormone? Testosterone. It actually increases that so that you build your confidence.
And you can ask the male.
No, I know. Sorry, I know. Wow, that was funny, wasn't it? But yeah, you know, even if you've got to do that to build your own confidence before you go and do anything, but really try and find ways to be yourself.
Yes.
And really create the own path for you, and don't. You know what? You are going to be hit with more decisions to make than a man when you go on this journey, because you are going to have to make decisions around children. You are going to have to make decisions around, you probably are going to have to go in and fight your corner for that pay rise a little bit more. You probably are going to have to think about, when you're probably at the prime of your career, do I need to stop and take care of the elders here? Or can I have that conversation with my husband? But I think
can I have the conversation with my boss?
Yes. But I think this is it. The world is changing. It's getting a lot more. There's metrics around diversity and inclusion now in business. There's, the laws are changing. Workplaces are becoming more flexible and adaptable to the unique circumstances that face a female. But don't be afraid of being open about them and really talking about them. Don't be afraid of setting 50-50 boundaries in your home relationship
And career.
Yes.
And sometimes I think we will have to be a bit more gritty and fight for a little bit more until it gets 50-50 naturally.
Yeah, but you know what? We're better people that come out the other side. We're
Correct.
The best of the best.
We are the stronger.
When we come out the other end. Having to go through adversity and having to go through things being thrown at you at the time feels rubbish. But it makes you a better person when you come out the other end.
100%.
So bring on the obstacle course.
The assault course. It's on. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
That was fantastic.
Bye.
Bye.